Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And this episode topic, we didn't really think up so much as we stumbled across it. We stubbed our toe on it. It kind of hit us in the face a little bit. And we figured it might be worth talking about. You see, when John and I go to do an episode, we'll generally talk about what we're going to chat about on the show, maybe do a tiny outline if it's information heavy. And we realized that for the past, I don't know, year? Well, for like a long while, we haven't really been playing many games. You know, we have the hobby section of hobby time and games played. We really aren't playing.
Yeah, especially over the last couple of months. We've had some life stuff go on, but there's also been other reasons why we've taken kind of a pseudo break, not a full break. This thing happens when you record a show every week about the thing. You can't ever take a full break from it. Mm-hmm. But we've taken mostly a break from Warhammer stuff specifically, but a lot of wargaming stuff in general.
Yeah, I mean, I've played, 2 days of wargaming in the past year? Something like that?
We did some on, Tabletop Simulator, but, for the most part, we took most of a break, right?
I mean, quite a long stretch, and to be honest, it kind of... even before that. Now, granted, some of that was COVID, but I think even without COVID, I wouldn't have been playing a whole lot. And we thought that might be worth talking about itself. You know, maybe it's worth having a whole episode on taking a break from tabletop wargaming and when you might want to consider it and why. But speaking of the lack of games played, let's hop into hobby time and games played. John, what you been up to?
Well, I don't have any games played, as you so subtly hinted at in the previous segment.
Ah, yes, I'm hiding them hints. No one saw that twist coming.
Foreshadowing, I suppose.
Shamalama ding dong I be.
No, I haven't been playing a lot of games. I played that game with Seth last week against his Necrons. I'm going to be playing games in the beginning of November. I'm going to be getting ready for that, to play a weekend of games, which is pretty good. And part of that was getting an airbrush.
Hey-o!
Getting ready and learning how to use it. Yes, finger gun noises. Learning how to use the airbrush, getting it, using it to paint stuff. It's been a little bit of a bear the first day, but by the end of the first day, I think I've figured it out. And now I'm ready to start experimenting and just testing my limits and seeing how far I can take this new tool in my toolbox. And hopefully it allows me to speed up my painting. Because I got a lot of stuff I want to paint, and then there's a lot more stuff I want to paint.
Yeah, I mean, 1 week ago you said it should make you consistent. How's that consistency been?
Well, maybe consistent in, painting?
No. Your paint layers and stuff, I think was the implication. That, it makes your painting more consistent. And in my experience, it's actually harder to be consistent with airbrush. The thing that got me when I first started was mixing paints to the right thickness. Oh my god. I could not do it. Too thick, too thin, never could hit it just right. It took a long time before I could get similar viscosities between my paint cups.
Oh, see, I've gotten that down pretty well. I've been doing it with, a brush and a lot of other things for so long that I've learned how to do that in the cup. It also helps that I did a ton of research and watched a bunch of stuff and had a bunch of other people fail for me. So then I could ask them for advice, like you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and so I had a much easier time getting into it, but I did see an improvement on the consistency of paint on my model. I had a bad habit of getting to like the 6th or 7th thing in my badge painting and getting a little sloppy. And I don't have that problem with the airbrush with base coating.
Hey. Yeah.
Which is a huge boon for doing things, especially because like I'm taking on the guard as a project, which, much like my Skaven, is going to be many models. So,
Yeah, it's quite a number of models. It's a horde army, that's for damn sure. Like, I know people say,
yeah, but I
like,
keep
guard
thinking
is
about painting
tanks.
those
But, like, yeah,
tanks.
there are tanks. But what else do tanks come with? Like, 60 guards.
Yeah, but how many guardsmen do you bring with those tanks? 60's a low number.
Yeah, I mean, you're bringing a sea of, like, just regular guardsmen on foot. And then, like, mortar teams and heavy weapon teams. And, you know, the little jetpack guardsmen. And the whole 9 yards. Yeah, airbrush will help a lot there.
Yeah. Other than that, still been doing my requisite reading. It hasn't all been 40K and like Warhammer books I've been reading, though. I've been reading more Harry Turtledove. Some of you out there might know who that
Guns
is.
of the South?
Not Guns of the South. I have not been reading that. I've been reading The Hot War. He's an alternative history writer in which he writes what-if scenarios in history. And since I'm kind of a history nerd, I'm a huge fan. And don't worry, that isn't a dog whistle for anything. I just actually like learning about history.
Yeah, you gotta. I don't know, our fun listeners. I don't know where y'all are, but around here in the Kentucky parts, when someone says they're a history buff, it could be like, oh, so you have a sort of PhD, or you dislike anyone of color. Okay, very cool.
Yeah, you kind of got to elaborate what history,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of folks out there who've been, and this is not a direct jab at anyone, who just watched a shit ton of the History Channel of like ancient aliens and went, that's all real. And that's just not the case.
Oh, God,
Like,
no. Don't get me
There's
started.
lots of perspectives.
The only thing
There's lots of
Ancient
perspectives to
Aliens
history.
implies, if that all of that is real, is that aliens hate white people. If anyone needs me to elaborate, I'll point you in the right direction.
We can do a whole episode about why we don't like ancient aliens.
God, I fucking hate Ancient Aliens. Jesus Christ, absolutely no founding on any sort of logic, not even their own internal logic. It's just idiocy as far as the eye can We're talking about war games. Anyway, Turtle Dove. Great books. If you're into some books with goofy premises that actually get into some interesting historical context, recommend it. When I was younger, I had a History of Wars of America teacher recommend his book Guns of the South to me, which is a really goofy book set in the American Civil War, where the what if story is, what if a handful of Confederate soldiers through a time machine stumble across 10 AK-47s and bring them back to fight the war? Will it swing it in their favor? Plot twist, the guns ain't why they lost. But it's a real fun little novel if you're history buffs. Didn't think I'd be plugging that on the show.
Yeah, it's good stuff. But what about you? Have you done any hobby stuff whatsoever?
Oh, yeah. I will admit this week has been slower. So, as I've kind of talked
Gasp.
about, like,
You've been doing things.
I've been doing so much. Like, I've hobbied my butt off, where I'm, like, painting 2 or 3 hours a night. However, John mentioned that we have this sort of, like, game day coming up in November. We have, like, 6 of us are going to crash at my new place. We're going to play through the weekend, and it's going to be really fun. But I just moved in here, so I have to prep everything. That room that we're going to be playing in, completely empty. Like, it just was holding unopened packing boxes. So my wife and I have been real busy just around the house, trying to get ready. We've now got, like, every room in the house unpacked and looking livable, and the game room was kind of the last to come. We got some bookshelves in, we built 2 of those, put them up on the wall, started unpacking all the gaming books and figures and, you know, the whole 9 yards, getting that up. Had to clean all that out of there and clean some junk out. Also starting to get the 3D printer ready to get some models going for said boys weekend. On top of just, you know, trying to get a new house up to my level of maintenance. has just been time consuming. But that did slow my hobby, but it didn't stop it altogether. I've still been painting up on some orcs and doing some building. Those 6 pigs last week that I said I was going to paint up on, I did start painting up on them now that they're all put together. I got them primed, I got them zenithalled, I got them base coated in their sort of middle red color. Now I got to come in with sort of like a flesh tone on the tummies, you know, because pigs, they get a little discolored down around the tum-tums. And then come in over the top with like a bright red and start working on those models. But I think just because the Boys' Day is like coming up on me, I'm going to have to set those aside and just dive into the Custodes. I've got to paint 3 Terminators, 4 jet bikes, I think, and then a Telemon Dreadnought. So I have much painting to do, but it's coming along.
I have to. I'm assuming that I'm going to get the guard from you this weekend, and then I'm going to be painting like a madman for guard because I want to try to get as many of them done before game day as possible.
Yeah, I just don't want gray plastic. Like, if I don't get them all of my Custodes fully painted, that's fine. I can live with that. As long as they're not gray. You know what I mean? Like...
Yeah.
That's fine. I can live with that. But also, as of recording, like 2 nights ago, the game Back 4 Blood dropped. It's sort of like a Left 4 Dead spiritual successor. And my wife and I love the Left 4 Dead series. We played the bejesus out of it when we first started dating in college, and like we just pull it up from time to time since to play it, and we love playing like Vermintide and games like it. So when Back 4 Blood got announced, we were really excited to try it, and we didn't want to ruin it for ourselves. So like we skipped the betas and all of that, and we were waiting for release. And that dropped like 2 nights ago, and I would be lying if I said I didn't spend like 1 hour a night over the past 2 nights playing it with her, because it's just good fun. I can't paint all the time. And I imagine that will continue to happen and slow me down a little. But if slaying zombies is why I don't get fully painted, I could live with that. Also been doing a little bit of, like, I know it's not tabletop wargaming hobby time, but it's hobby. Research on Magic the Gathering. John and our editors, Seth, are bastards and have been trying to get me to play, what is it, Commander,
yes, it's so good.
For years.
We're gonna have a grand time.
For years. And I've always said no. And then Magic the Gathering, being also bastards, decided to go back to Innistrad, which is my favorite setting when I was playing in college. And, like, fine, now that I can, I made a tribal werewolf deck so I could play with them. And, doing some research on that. And also on another card game called Flesh and Blood. Don't know if anybody out there will know about it. It's also a traditional card game, but instead of being like magic planeswalkers going to war, you're like 2 heroes having a duel back and forth with like parries and counters and attacks. And it just looks fun. So I've done a little bit of research there also, like listening to stuff while I work. So
yeah,
it's been a time.
It's been time. I can't wait for Neon Kamigawa next January or February is when it's supposed to come out. Anyways, I know it's not a Magic podcast. I'm just very excited about them going back to Kamigawa, the Japanese-inspired plane, but this time it's Cyberpunk.
Did Cyberpunk 2077 make you sad and excited? Well, here you go.
Yeah, I was very sad about Cyberpunk 2077 because I want to be a street samurai. Love them street samurai. Let's go.
I know, but it was so meta. Just like, yeah, let's stick it to the big corporations that are ruining the world. And then the game was ruined by a big corporation. It's so good. So good.
It was actually an ARG game.
It had to
I'm sorry. You didn't get it. We're getting off topic. We should probably head back.
Or maybe, John, talking about big corporations making people upset, maybe we're just on topic.
Oh, no.
All right, John. So I guess now that we've sort of acknowledged that we've been on a break, Just not playing a whole lot. I guess let's first talk about, you know, why we did it. You know what I mean? Just so we could kind of level set our own experience before we get into the more general topic ideas.
Did you want to go first? Or you want me to go? Because I think both of us are going to have very similar things, so we don't both need to say it.
I'll let you go first.
Okay. So for me, like obviously COVID, huge part of it, right?
I mean, yeah.
COVID happened, like the most I was interacting with the world was like buying some models, painting them, hoping that it ends soon, or that like it can open up, or a vaccine, or some sort of like safety measure can happen so I can play the game, and then like playing the video games like Total Warhammer and other video games. Got into a whole bunch of stuff during quarantine, and as things opened up and we started getting vaccinated, being able to play and do stuff, scheduling became hard. A lot of the things out in the world are still chaotic. Like, work is still crazy. It just is. Getting like gas and there's so many hoops to jump through. Everything seems like it's taking longer to do. Like while we're still in the pandemic, which is fine. That just happens. We're dealing with the thing. That makes it a little bit more of a hassle to play. Some people aren't feeling up for that kind of gaming, and so like the player pool gets reduced for how many people you can play with at any one time. So for me at least, being able to play has meant I have to travel, right? I have to travel up to you to play.
Which is about a 2-hour drive, give or take.
Yeah, and a 2-hour drive isn't something I can do on a weeknight. It's something I have to do on a weekend. And if I'm going to go up there, I'm not going to go up there to play just a game and then come back. It's going to be a whole weekend thing. So it's got to be like planned. Which that makes it a little bit more difficult. So it can't be done like regularly, like every week, right? But then I have another reason past that. Two more. Well, the next one is that money. Like the pandemic increased the cost of everything. So keeping up with the hobby and buying the stuff that I wanted to buy to keep playing the game just kept being more money. And for a long time during the pandemic, I was not making enough money to even begin to talk about it because of how much more money it costs for everything. So like for me, money was a huge reason why I kind of just started taking a break. Because like my grocery bills were doubling to some degree, between having to like switch products because stuff was running out, stuff like that, and just in general, like a lot of the costs of my life were going up. You know, I was an essential worker. I still am an essential worker, so like I didn't get to work from home. I was still going out every day, and that was a hassle, right? Like everything took longer. Everything was a pain, and so. More money, less time, kind of equivalates to probably not going to spend a ton of time on my hobby, especially if that hobby is much more intensive than just like sitting down in front of a computer and playing video games. But the third one really is what kind of like centered it for me, of like taking much more of a break than my old, which was like playing at least every other week, right? Like playing pretty regularly. And like constantly wanting to play, writing lists, and like kind of diving really hard into it all the time. And it was a lot of the stuff coming out from GW. Like they did very good throughout all of 8th edition. The release of Age of Sigmar was rough, but then they did better at the 2nd edition of Age of Sigmar. Like towards the end of 8th edition, I didn't like all of the rules bloat with the books. Just saying it. Like I think that they kind of jumped the shark with that. And then 9th edition comes out, and like a lot of it is due to the pandemic. I will say that. It's not just like GW can't make magic logistics happen. The slow rollout of books in 40k, the treatment of some of the factions in AOS, and then on top of all of that, they raised their prices a little bit because everyone's raising their prices. Inflation's a hell of a thing. All of those things I could have dealt with, right? And I haven't quit the game entirely. But I have questioned a lot of my purchases, and it's been they've taken a harder stance on creators in the space. It's not great, not a good look. They have fumbled their release of their apps. The AOS one released better, but not perfect. The Warhammer Plus thing, not great. Kill Team, not great.
Yeah.
We still don't have most of our books for 9th edition. And then on top of that, we find out that their employees aren't being paid a ton. Like their rules designers are not being paid like a good wage, despite the fact they are now $1 billion company. And it put a sour taste in my mouth.
That one stings me the worst. Like, I know in sort of the community, that is the topic I see talk about the least, but it's the one that bothers me the most. I don't know. That one stings.
Yeah, like like the people who are making your secondary games, like Kill Team or Necromunda, all that. Like, regardless of whether or not how valid what's being said, the fact of the matter is, like, they didn't address what was brought up, and that kind of sucks. I understand this is a thing that all companies do. You know, I'm not very public about my political stuff on the show, but I definitely think that it's dog shit, right? Like your billion, we pay how much money for these plastic army men, and for a long time, it was kind of insinuated that, like, oh, well, they're paying their artists pretty well. Well, apparently they do pay their artists pretty decently. Well, what about their rules writers? Like, everyone talks shit about how GW's got terrible errors in their books all the time, or like this is unbalanced, or this is messed up, or this didn't seem like it got enough polish. Well, I'll tell you what, like, if I was making that little of money, that little low of a salary, like there are salaried positions making like the equivalence of what, like a US amount of $30,000 a year.
Less from that guy's post. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, even if that was like high end, right? Let's be generous to the $1 billion company.
Oh, goody.
Yeah, you be generous to the $1 billion company and say it's $30,000 a year. How invested am I in actually like making that work? Like, how invested am I in making sure that's good? Like, it's kind of like the problem that a similar company, Blizzard, which is on the gaming company, had, and that people are doing this job because they love your games and they love your settings. They probably grew up with it. It probably means something to them. Probably like it means to me. Like, I read these books as a kid. I got into this hobby as a kid. It was great. You know, I've grown up with this thing, and they probably loved the fact they got to work with it. And then you abuse that by then paying them less than they're worth for what is essentially the whole reason you have a business. Like, you can say until you're blue in the face that your company is a model company. The fact is, people buy your models to play your games.
Yeah, I think if you want to test that theory, stop putting out rule books and see how quickly people jump ship.
If you didn't actually care about rules as much as you did, you wouldn't be making as many secondary games, and you wouldn't be selling as many rule books and codexes as you do. That's just it. If the rules were free, I could maybe believe that argument, but they're not, for a reason. You know, you charge for these rules because you people play the game. They think they buy the books to play the game. And so all of that this is kind of a long rant, but it is tied me down to like taking a break for a little bit. Like, I'm going to play, you know, I might play with more 3D printed models. I might play, you know, because I play casually. I don't play tournaments, especially not GW sanctioned tournaments in which 3D printed models are banned at, which is a whole nother story. But I have a hard time wanting to spend like $160 on some of their like centerpiece models.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll buy some stuff every once in a while, but I'm not buying nearly as much as I used to. And I'm gonna keep playing, but like, it's every time there's a mess up, it pushes me more towards I can just play another game. And that's a big reason, you know. So for me, taking a break meant lots of little things built up. And then like a big thing that kind of just like set off that dynamite of like, yeah, you're going to take a break. And that's why I didn't do anything in the hobby for like a month, 2 months. I was just burnt out on top of all the normal COVID stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel a lot of that. And I mean, I mirror a lot of that. Obviously, COVID happened, and I know we have listeners in like, I think 21 countries now. So like, I don't want to go making generalities because I don't know how every one of those countries handled lockdowns, but I imagine most everybody couldn't play, at least not as freely as you used to at the least, or at worst, you could not play, period, which was the case for me. so that was part of it. But let's be honest, like I couldn't play like tournaments, but if I really wanted to like keep playing with friends, I could have, but I still didn't. And I'm fortunate to where the money thing didn't really hit me in the same way it hit John. Stuff went up, but not too terribly for me and my wife. But I think part of it for me was, as John mentioned, the slow book rollout for 40K. Like, everybody was really excited for ninth, right? Like, everybody was super, super excited for ninth. And everybody wanted to hop in, everybody wanted to kind of take a gander at it. In the past year, I have played precisely one game of 40K 9th edition in the flesh. One. In total, I have played 2. And that's not because I couldn't, like, maybe rally the wagons and get games in locally. It's because I really didn't have the gumption to do so. The slow book rollouts in our friend group ensured that one person had a new book and everyone else didn't. And that makes it a little hard to play the game. When one person is like swinging in an entirely another weight class and everyone else is just trying to keep up. And I know that like, if you're very competitive, you can still make a list that works. Like, yeah, dude, I know. But like, we're casual people just casually playing. And that's a lot to ask for some of the players in my group who are newer players. It's not like I can look at the Tau player and go, hey man, just like tool up this ultra competitive list and make 0 mistakes the entire time you play it and think like 2 turns ahead and you'll be fine.
Well, I think
that's not like feasible.
Yeah, and looking at it from a more casual perspective, like okay, so you have a new book, right? Like when the new Drukhari book came out, our editor plays it. We went through like, okay, what can this faction do? What can this faction do? Like it's something that me and him do all the time when books get released, right? We'll compare like notes of like, this is broken, before we start like watching videos of other people talking about it. And we kind of came to this, like the assumption upon reading the book that there was not a lot that a lot of the non-codex books could do in the way that you're kind of pushed to collect and build that army, which is the way most casual people do, right? Mm-hmm. Like if someone's casually playing like Tyranids, they're not going to spam, 3 of each of the best thing. They're kind of going to take the big monsters they like, and they're going to take like the big, the critters they like.
Little Griblies.
Guard. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you're not going to buy up $600 worth of models just so you can play the game for 6 months till you wait for your book. Like that's the bigger problem. It's not that it's not possible to play against it, but you're asking someone to not just sit down and play a game, but you're asking someone to play at a disadvantage that is unfair, and the only way for them to get an even playing field is to go buy another $600 worth of models.
Mm-hmm. And that's
of models they might not even necessarily want.
Yeah, that's a lot to ask. And with that being the case, we just, we looked at like, oh, well, here's everything we would have to do to try to even the playing field. Or we just don't. So we just didn't.
Or we just wait it out. So we just take a break, wait it out.
So we just didn't. And now on top of all of that, there is all of the other stuff the GW have been doing, which absolutely horseshit. But I don't know. I don't want to like get too negative because it can be negative. And, hence why we took the break, because we didn't want to be. But also, like, I don't know, this one might be more personal to me than John, but especially in doing a podcast, like you're in a lot of Facebook groups and you're keeping up with every Warhammer community article and every teaser and every rules preview. And like you're trying to keep your finger on the pulse of the community and see what everybody's talking about, what they're frustrated about, what they're theory crafting, what's coming down the pipe, what are the rumors, what are the leaks, what are the fuzzy pictures and like 12p that we could try to guess if it's Rogel Dorn's big toe.
Don't you talk about
that's going to be on Chapter Master Valrak tomorrow. Also, Valrak, We love your stuff. Good work. But like all of that can get exhausting. At least it did for me. I felt like I was on this perpetual wheel that never slowed down and never stopped. And like, oh, you gotta keep up and you gotta buy. And yeah, look at all these supplement books. There's nothing really useful in it, but you need it for 3 pages. You gotta buy. Oh, here's our next one. You gotta keep up. Like, I was exhausted. So I just decided to step off the wheel.
And, you talked about community for a second, and don't get me wrong, the community's great, has some wonderful parts to it. It also becomes a salt fest real quick, and there's a lot of internet troll out there that'll really sour your shit if you sit on Warhammer internet for too long on all sites. Like, there is always some sort of drama, there is always some sort of shit going on, and people love to bitch about plastic toys.
Yep, you gotta be careful. And I found that all of those factors together were making me not have fun with my hobby. It just wasn't. And I realized that even the way I was thinking about the hobby was becoming overly negative. And we really go hard to keep it out of the show, because we don't want to be like those people. But internally, my relationship with not just GW, but the hobby in general was souring. And I had 2 options, sort of to muddle through and become a miserable bastard, or to just step away and disconnect some and come back later when I can engage, when I could be excited about it and engage more healthily. And for me, I think one of those options is much more healthy for myself and just in general, to just unplug and wait it out. Because eventually the wheel will turn, it'll come back around, and I'll be able to hop in and play. My force will have a book. All my buddies' forces will have books for the 40K example, and we can, smash the crap out of each other. But there was going to take some time to do that. And yeah, I felt that it was the appropriate thing to do, and there was no shame in doing it. And I think that's why we want to make this episode, so we can try to talk about those feelings openly and honestly and, bring them out. And I will also say, I don't want to go into this too heavily because it will get dark quick. But also, during COVID, pretty rough time for a lot of people. Incredibly isolating time, incredibly challenging, scary. And for someone like me who has already struggled with depression before, the big sick, man, it got worse. And that did not help. The mental health struggles made all of that other stuff just exponentially harder. And, all of a sudden the thing that I used as a crutch to help my mental health was acting like an anchor to pull it down. And that could be a thing that could happen to y'all. And we have considered doing a whole episode on mental health and hobby, but don't worry, that'll be later because that one might get a little rough. But if you're out there and you're kind of listening to our personal anecdotes as we're going through the topics of the community and the Facebook posts and, Warhammer's articles and all the rules previews and being in the GW sphere, or just the game systems aren't working for you, or even if you don't play Warhammer, you're just playing other tabletop games that you're really struggling to keep up with a rapid pace, and you feel like you're not having fun, we really want to tell you, it's okay if you wanted to step away. And I don't even mean you necessarily have to fully, pull the plug. Maybe you cut out certain activities. Maybe you don't look at the Facebook groups. Maybe you don't read the articles. Maybe you don't do both those things, but you keep painting and playing. Maybe you drop the groups, you keep the articles, you drop the painting, you keep playing. You can pick your own adventure here. Whatever things aren't working for you, it's okay to step away for a little while. And I think, some people look at this kind of like the long road of someone who is struggling through a crisis, like an addiction, that if you fall off the wagon, you can never hop back on. But y'all, it's not that serious. It's just some plastic toys.
We make jokes about plastic crack, but if your attachment to Warhammer is that of if you stop buying something for 2 months, then you feel terrible about it and you never want to touch it again. Your problem is not with the hobby. Your problem is with that kind of loop, if that makes sense. Your problem is with buying stuff. It's not with what you're buying. And like, I'm not gonna tell you anything specific, but like, I think that it's healthy with any hobby and with anything to take like a break and like reassess it like frequently. For me, like I do it with video games all the time. I do it with this hobby. I do it with books that I like fantasy genres, movies, TV shows. I do it with myself. Like, not to get too personal, but like I try to reevaluate things in my life regularly so that I know what's working with me and I'm not just doing stuff to like fall into the doldrums, right? And for hobby, when I fall into the doldrums, I am not motivated to paint. My painting gets worse. I'm not motivated to play. My playing gets worse. I stop having as much fun. I write bad lists. I end up accidentally being a jerk. Like, there's all sorts of weird things that can happen. And so by being more conscious of like, okay, I need to leave these Facebook groups, right? I need to stop looking at these pictures on Instagram of models. Or like, I need to just not play a game for 2 months and just paint. Or maybe it's like, man, I'm getting like bogged down by how much I still have to paint and pushing through isn't helping. Maybe if I just put a pause on it and remember why I'm painting and play some real fun games with my buds. Or maybe just break from all of it for like a month so I can like, no books, no articles, nothing. So I can just like do something else for a bit and then decide if I want to come back. Most of the time I do. I'm assuming most people do. They go, yeah, I want to go back to that thing. So they just need a little bit of time away from it to remember like, oh no, this is a thing that I actually like. That's entirely valid.
And I mean, sensible. Not just valid, but sensible.
And you said something, and I think it's important to put out there for listeners. GW is a company that wants to sell you stuff. And so a lot of their articles and their hype cycle around products is built to get you to keep buying and built to make you feel that way of like, you got to buy this next book. You don't. If you're in a casual friend group and a new book comes out and you're not all that interested in it and you don't need to rack it up your power to play with your buds, you don't need to buy the book. You can just not buy it. You don't need to buy all the new models. You can play an older edition if you want to. You can do whatever you want with your friend group and your gaming group. You can play different games, all that fun stuff. Do not feel like because new articles are coming out on Warhammer Community, you have to follow that, right? I fall into that trap all the time. That's why I buy up new forces all the time. But I do in reverse. Like, whatever army isn't getting releases, I end up buying. Like, look at my Tau, look at my Guardsman.
Yeah, it's a thing.
But
the only thing I would caution against is if you're going to step away, you don't necessarily need to step away from the friends who you get to hang out with when you play the game. Like,
yeah, and don't burn a bridge, right?
Yeah,
like it's not just with your friends. Like, if you're gonna take a break for like a month, don't sell all your armies.
Yeah, maybe be a little more chill. Like for my friends and I, we still hung out. I mean, during COVID time less, but like, you know what I mean. We still hung out, but we would do different things. We'd play board games, or we'd watch movies, or we'd just have a few drinks and talk about what was going on in our lives. So we were still connecting, even though we weren't necessarily connecting over little plastic figures because we had all sort of agreed we were taking a little break. And that's the thing that you really want to hold on to is, those friends that you made as you were playing. So that way when the break is done, y'all can just pick right up and keep on going. That's the thing I would caution against. Everything else, fair game, y'all. And, I know that recently with the Warhammer Plus and the pay and like Kill Team, there's a lot of things in the community that are making people mad, many of which are entirely justified. But if you personally are feeling burnt out, we just wanted to make this to kind of validate you a little bit. Because let's be honest, like this is a marathon. This isn't a sprint. This isn't a video game where they're only going to support it really for 6 months before the servers just stop getting updates. This is a game system that will go on for a long, 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 long time. You're not missing out. It'll be there when you come back, and we'll be here with you the entire time if you want us to. Or we'll be here when you come back too.
And to be honest, like, if you come back and there's like a new edition, you still want to play the old edition, just play the old edition.
You can. People do it all the time.
It's perfectly fine. I know people who still play 7th edition. Like,
I know people still playing the old Horus Heresy. Like,
yeah, you're just allowed to do that. That's fine. Like, and with all the models you bought, they can just sit on your shelf whenever you want to use them. That's kind of the great thing about them. They don't go bad. Like, they don't expire. You can still just use them. Which makes it a lot easier to play the game. And I'll say from my personal experience, I'm not necessarily saying this is exactly what will happen to you, but when I came back after taking that extended break throughout COVID and played our first like boys' day where we were playing Age of Sigmar, I felt like I was like a young kid almost, like a teenager playing the game again, because we were just having a good time. I didn't even care who was winning or losing. There was a point in all those games where I stopped checking victory points. And we all did it. Like, there was multiple games where we would get to, like, the end of, like, turn 3 and go, oh, we haven't been checking victory points. We're just fighting dudes.
just rolling dice, man. Like,
and laughing and having a good time. Like, eating chicken tenders, drinking Mountain Dew, and, like, acting like a bunch of, like, dumb 15-year-old boys again. But it was good. It was fun. And it didn't feel forced. It didn't feel like eggshells or anything. It just felt like a good time. And it consistently has done that every time I've been playing after taking that break. It's like it revitalized a portion of it. But I've also changed my expectations, so I don't expect every game to be close or every game to be a banger. Like, I expect them to be a game, and then I get surprised when they're great. And that's another opportunity that you have when you take a break, is you can reassess what it is you want from playing the game. Do you want it to be competitive? Well, maybe start going after activities that are more competitive. Maybe you just want it casual, like pickup games, like a nice in-between casual and competitive. Go through that pathway with your gaming group. Maybe you don't want any competitiveness whatsoever, and you want to run mostly narrative-focused games with like a structured story and like levels almost to it. Well, talk to your group. Do that. You can do the hobby differently when you come back, so that maybe you don't get burnt out as hard and then need another break quickly.
Yeah, man. It's your hobby. And remember...
You want it now.
It is your hobby. Like, this isn't your job, at least for vast majority of people listening. This isn't your job. You aren't making like your living off of this. This is something you engage with in your free time to have fun. And, it's much like any sort of good thing, whether it's, a car, a lawnmower, a friendship, a marriage, it takes a little maintenance to make sure that you keep it fun. And if you realize that it's becoming less so, don't be afraid to get in there, tweak it, and make it good again. And I think that's a good message to take away from the show. I think it is.
Yeah.
If there's anything I can leave you with, it's that. Because really, I mean, as we've talked about before, we started this podcast almost a year ago, Jesus Christ, to try to help people get more fun out of their hobby in a way that other shows really weren't doing at the time, and I still don't think are. At least not that I know of. And we would love it if this might be a wake-up call for some of you who you knew you were having a bad time, or maybe things just felt weird and you didn't know how to put it into words, to help you sort of recalibrate and get back on track. That definitely worked for us, I can tell you that much. And it's been pretty great. And if you're out there and you want to share that story, if maybe this is making sense to you, if you're comfortable, feel free, put it in the YouTube comments down below. Or if, you're not comfortable, or if you're on one of the other platforms like Twitter or Instagram, feel free. Send us a DM. It doesn't have to be a public thing. If you want to chat about it, we're here. I mean, we could kind of compare notes and figure this thing out together. And we'd love to be able to talk to you and help you. And speaking of a little earlier, a 1-year anniversary, we are working on a 1-year anniversary special that'll be, pretty candid in terms of topic. So look forward to that and keep an eye out. That'll be coming in later November, just before Thanksgiving. And Until then, that's been all of our opinions. Bona fide, Kentucky Fried. We'll see y'all on the next video.